Wicked is a musical comedy about the origin of Oz's Wicked Witch of the West. There's plenty of laughs here and a story that's decent overall. Let's talk about it. This movie is the product of a string of adaptations. It's based on the stage musical Wicked, which most will recognize as a loose adaptation of The Wizard of Oz. I'll spare you the rest of the adaptation credits because you all have Google. We follow Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo. She's a green-skinned woman who gets thrusted into the school of Shiz University, where she's convinced to hone the telekinetic powers she was born with. She struggles with being alienated by the other students, including Galinda, played by Ariana Grande. The two of them are forced to live together, which would unexpectedly leave lasting impacts on each of them. The plot focuses on the oppression that talking animals are facing in Oz. Zoophobia is running rampant, with humans trying to literally silence the animals and exclude them from society. The movie digs into how people generally don't like what they don't understand. This naturally bothers Elphaba because she knows all too well what it's like to be mistreated just for being different despite being good-hearted. It's an interesting origin story for the Wicked Witch because she wasn't truly evil. If you've only seen The Wizard of Oz and this is your only knowing of her,
I'll get you, my pretty.
it might be strange to now look at her with sympathy. This movie takes her archetype and Galinda the Good's and puts them on their heads. Elphaba is the one who thinks about other people, while Galinda the Good, or Galinda as she was formerly known as, is very superficial. She doesn't typically do things for other people unless they benefit her somehow. Everything she does circles back to her agenda. But she and Elphaba form an unlikely bond that brings something new out of each of them, introducing good to Galinda and human connection to Elphaba. The dynamic between the two of them was really fun once they started to get along, mostly because Galinda was just really funny throughout the movie. There's a lot of really funny dialogue from her and a couple of other characters. The naivety and foolishness that they bring to the table is really charming and endearing. A lot of the humor comes from the over-the-top theatrics weaved into the characters. Sometimes actors will overact for comedic value, but it was also funny every time someone broke the theatrics. Like Galinda will sometimes behave over the top and dramatic and then just be like, all right. I keep talking about Galinda. If it's not obvious, she was the movie. She's the comic relief, the character who shows the most growth, and she's the most animated and scene stealing overall. I cannot imagine anyone other than Ariana Grande playing this character. She brings the naivety to the character that was needed to make her selfish behavior feel charming. Because of her, Galinda feels like a young and innocent character who just needs to be put on the right path. When in the hands of a different actress, she easily could have felt like a very dislikable character. That's not to say that Elphaba doesn't deliver too, though. She is the heart of the movie. We yearn for her because her story is unfortunately a tragedy. The movie gives us every reason to root for this character and feel sympathy for her, making it a little bit tense since we know who she's inevitably supposed to become. There's a wonderful, pivotal scene somewhere in the second act. I don't want to spoil it, but it gets really quiet and emotional. It was at this moment that she commanded the audience's admiration. It's hard to watch this and not appreciate the commitment Cynthia Erivo brought to this role. When she's singing and dancing, she truly looks like she's giving it her all. The cast overall is just wonderful. Not all of the supporting characters were given a whole lot to do. I'm looking at Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh, but they were perfect for their roles, and everyone looks like they're having a genuinely wonderful time playing their characters. So I have no experience with Wicked prior to this movie. I've never seen the musical, and I've never really listened to the music online. That said, my theater companion was actually pretty familiar with the music, so I have been told that all of the tracks from this movie are original tracks from the musical. But sometimes a song will be interrupted so that the characters can exchange normal dialogue mid-song, and then it'll pick back up after. I really appreciated that a lot of the songs in this movie provided narrative value with the lyrics. Sometimes with musicals, a song will just be an unnecessary extension of a key piece of dialogue. You know, like sometimes a character will be like, I've been feeling kind of lonely lately. Lonely, I'm Mr. Lonely. The lyrics were actually important to pay attention to because they would sometimes contribute to the story. That might be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you feel about musicals. I would call that a positive, but if you are the type of viewer who normally clocks out during the musical numbers, you might be a little bit bummed because you kind of gotta pay attention to them. If you like musicals, there is a lot of fun to be had with this movie. If you do not like musicals, some of the things about the movie that were less than perfect might be a little bit more noticeable for you. For example, the plot is just very predictable. With everything that's presented to us early on, you will probably see all of the big plot points coming a mile away, even if you somehow manage to avoid the trailers. It's a pretty simple plot, and since most of you already know what direction it's supposed to go in with The Wizard of Oz in mind, you probably won't find too many surprises. So if you were expecting a very unique story with twists and turns that you weren't expecting, you should definitely lower your expectations. I also feel like we could have seen more development to Elphaba's magic. The whole reason she goes to this school is to hone her skills, but I just really feel like we should have seen more of that. All that said, the world of Oz is really fantastical and outlandish. It's not the type of story you take seriously, so if we're being honest, the story works. It's simple, but it's still fun because of how great the characters are. Between the layers of depth they have to the ways they charm and entertain us, they make for very memorable characters. As far as awards go, this movie is a strong contender in all of the artsy categories like Best Production Design, Costume Design, Hair and Makeup, Visual Effects. It's got a good chance at winning those awards, especially Best Production Design. But as far as acting nominations go, it's hard to say because the competition is a little bit stiff this season. Both Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande give wonderful performances, but the Best Actress category is pretty competitive, so I'm reluctant to say that either of them have a good or bad chance. Also, since apparently not everybody knew this is a two-parter. Wicked Part 2 is supposed to come next year. I say that because both my theater companion and the stranger sitting next to me didn't know this. For the most part, it does work as a standalone. It feels like a complete story by itself with a good stopping point, but there are some loose ends, so there is still value in seeing the sequel. So the story here might be just okay, but it's delivered extravagantly. It feels like this year's Wonka, except this movie was way funnier than Wonka, so it was much more enjoyable overall. The movie is just a lot of things. It's silly, endearing, colorful, musical, and it's released just in time for the holidays, making it a solid one to go see with the whole family. I'm happy to say that it's a pretty good movie. I bagged an early screening thanks to Amazon, but it officially hits theaters this weekend, and I think it's definitely worth seeing on opening weekend. Unless, of course, you just hate musicals. There's a lot of fun to be had with this movie, but if you're not down for the theatrics, then you probably won't enjoy it. Thank you for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Gladiator 2.